Welcome back to Reviews with Elaine, because I have opinions. Today's opinions will be about The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. So ironically, in my last review, the review for Axiom's End, I stated that I don't particularly like books that start with an absolute existential threat to humanity. Like, I'm not big on books that start on the 90 seconds to midnight point on the doomsday clock. And that's exactly what this book is. Like, literally, it is declared on page 1 that this is the end of the world. So fifth season takes place on a world where the Earth itself is angry. There's almost constant seismic activity. Volcanoes, earthquakes, and tsunamis are just facts of life to be planned for and dealt with as best as possible. Humanity has grown used to losing 10% or 20% or even 70% of its population every couple of centuries. And much of life centers around prepping for those inevitable disasters. There are some people born into this world called origines who have the ability to manipulate the seismic activity, repress it, or make it worse. And people fear them because they can cause such incredible disasters, destroy communities, and kill thousands. Many of the origins are killed as soon as they are discovered, but if guardians can find them first, they take the origins to be trained at the fulcrum. They are trained to be perfectly controlled weapons, and are told over and over again that they are not human, and that whatever the guardians do to them, they deserve. The fifth season follows 3 stories. The story of a child as she is taken to the fulcrum to be trained, a young woman who finds herself being mentored by the most powerful origin the fulcrum has produced in this generation, and a mother on a quest to revenge her son and save her daughter. All these stories are ultimately about one thing: people surviving a world that hates them for their power. So I worked really hard in phrasing that particular synopsis, trying desperately to do it in a way that did not reveal a major aspect of this story. So I'm going to talk about a few more general things, and then I'm going to give you a warning before we get to the bit that I'm going to have to talk about spoilers at some point. First, even though, yes, this is a book that does start with a horrific, literally earth-shattering disaster. And this is a book that exists in a world where society has laws written in stone about who you should abandon to death in times of inevitable disaster. Still, I did not find this nearly as depressing as I was afraid I was going to. I was very wary when I first picked up this book, like the first few pages, because I was thinking from moment one, oh god, I've picked up a book that's going to be way too dark for me. And I've heard the name N.K. Jemisin so many times, and everyone talks about loving her. And I've just been like, okay, can't wait to find one. And I was like, oh god, am I going to start with one that I'm not going to like? Oh no. But amazingly, this book wasn't too dark for me. And for a while, I couldn't quite figure out why. Like, I couldn't put my finger on what about it was fine. But I think it comes down to 2 things: focus and pressure. Which is interesting because a lot of the magic in this world is built on focus and pressure. So, you know, good metaphor here. So to explain what I mean. First, there's the focus. This book has a lot of bad people in it. There are people who don't give a shit about the people around them, that are perfectly happy dehumanizing others so that they don't have to treat them with empathy. People who actually seem to enjoy inflicting pain on others. But that's not where our focus is. Those are not our main characters. Those are not even really big secondary characters. They are the passing characters. People we see for a few pages at most. The characters that stick with us, that we spend a lot of time getting to know and getting to see and getting to evaluate, are mostly good people. We spend time with characters who are flawed, often giving into fear and petty meanness, but who are willing and able to see each other as human and help those around them. Basically, our main characters are real multifaceted people who are just trying to survive. The focus of this book is not on the bad people. The focus is on the good shining moments amongst the evil. The other side of that is the pressure. Our main characters in this book do some honestly horrific shit. There are moments that you are not going to agree with their choices, that you're going to be like, oh my god, that was a bad choice, that was a disaster, like, that was a panic moment. But that's the thing. Their horrific bad choices are almost always made under intense pressure. They are in really tight, dangerous situations that they often don't have time to think of another option. And when they do have time, there often aren't other options. And it's not just our main characters. The entire world is one where the Earth itself seems to be trying to wipe out humanity from existence. And that means there's a perpetual fear at any time that the Earth could open up below their feet. Ash clouds could blot out the sun, and the water could become toxic. People hoard resources not out of greed, but because it really could become life or death in the next year if you have that extra jar of vegetables or not. People think of throwing their neighbors out of community not out of cruelty or just like feelings they don't belong, but because there legitimately might not be enough food and water for you both to survive. There's cruelty and violence against the Origines, and it's really horrific, but at the same time, the Origines could accidentally kill them all while having a tantrum as a toddler. They are actually really dangerous. The cruelty makes sense, even though we know it's wrong. Like, reading from this perspective, you're going, yeah, that's wrong, that's horrible, that's bad. But at the same time, you understand where it came from, and you understand why people are acting this way. This makes it feel less like the novel believes that people are just inherently shitty, and more like it's the situation and the system is forcing otherwise fine people to become shitty. And yeah, some people are being shitty just because they are shitty. Those people exist in this book as well. But the overall impression is that the native state of humanity is not evil. And overall, this focus and pressure leave us with the impression that people are as good as the situation, culture, and society allow them to be. And I like that in a book because it matches my worldview. A lot better than books like Eye of the World, where everyone seemed to distrust each other for reasons, while the danger was far enough away that it didn't feel like it was applying enough pressure for people to act this way. And I think that's an important distinction in a book. Because when a book feels like it just exists in an evil world inhabited by mostly evil people, we tend to not see it as a mirror to our world. We just look at it and go, yep, glad that's not my world, that's bad, thank goodness we do things better over here in the real world. But when an author takes the time to show us how the evil of a world developed, we can see how our own evils can develop along those lines. And so the empathy for the characters directly translate to empathy for real human beings. Now, that's not to say that I think that all baddies in books should be people we can empathize with and understand. Like, I actually really love books with just pure evil villains, where you can just focus on watching the good guys do good and win epic battles. But when evil is part and parcel to the structure of the world, I just find it more interesting to be able to see how the evil developed. And this book allows you to do that. Partially because it's also a book that it's one of those fantasy novels where you can tell the author has mapped out the entire world's history, geography, and culture so fully that down to the precise logical details, it feels like a 10,000 piece puzzle that you can see how it goes together perfectly. And I also just love the different portrayals of how different people break under pressure. Overall, I personally love broken characters. I love people who have seen some shit and are barely holding themselves together. And I especially love characters who are super unstable emotionally, have been through hell and high water, and are also insanely powerful. I love that balance and that dichotomy. And it's one of my favorite character tropes, and there's a character in this book, Alabaster, who most perfectly is defined by that character. Also, I love weird, inhuman characters who act just subtly off, which we get in this novel. I love the overly obsessive researcher trope, and we get one of those. I also love the diversity of representation along the LGBTQIA spectrum we have in this book. Small spoiler here, we'll get to big ones later. This book features one of the only examples I have ever read of a happy, healthy, polyamorous relationship. And that's always super fun. I also think the POV use in this book is fucking fascinating. We've got two separate sections in third person present tense and one in second person present tense. And you just don't get a lot of books written in second person, which if you don't remember, second person is you do this, you walk over there, you climb a skyscraper. And this book especially, it not just puts you in the book, it's not like a choose your own adventure book. No, you are standing in the place of the protagonist. You are doing their actions. It is saying, you walk over there, you defeat the evil, you know. And like what it's doing, it's not subtle. Like it's very clear that what this book is doing is asking you to imagine yourself in this character's perspective. And objectively, that's what all books are doing, but this one's just a bit more direct about it. And I feel like in the hands of a lesser author, that would come across as feeling rather gimmicky, but here, I like it. And I think part of the reason it works here is because it's not the entire book that's in second person, it's just one of the three narratives. So it never felt like it was too much. It's also like written very direct and relatively simplistic while very poetic, so it's different enough from the norm to catch my attention while feeling very natural. And this does some great work just separating the Jemisin narrative from the other two, and building up to some really amazingly well done subtle reveals. And here's where we get to the point that I'm gonna have to bring up big spoilers. Like, if you are going to read this novel and have not read it as of yet, I do suggest stopping here. Like, I don't want to spoil this bit for you. Okay, so, good, yep. Demaya, Senite, and Jemisin, our three main protagonists, are all the same person from different points in their lives. And, oh my god, it was so well done. It's not directly stated until, like, the last chapter of the book, but there are plenty of hints throughout that, like, I would be surprised if anyone makes it that far without realizing what's happening. And it's a slow, gradual build-up to the reveal. It's not like just a, oh, hint here, if you're smart, you'll figure it out here, and if you're less smart, you'll figure it out here. No, it feels rather natural, and what I loved about it is it's very, very subtle, because they all feel like really different people. And yeah, it's not until you have the whole picture in your head that you can really see how each turns into the other. Which is also, I assume, why it's the Jemisin section that is in second person. It's after you understand everything she's been through that you can inhabit what she becomes. And it's one of the best examinations of identity at different points in life I have ever read. I see the inspiration of Ursula Le Guin in here, but I also see very clear inspiration from the history of people being forced to take different names under enslavement, as well as the tradition of giving themselves new names when they found freedom. Also, I just love the fact that Jemisin is sort of offended when she finds out that Tonki is actually living under a different identity than she was born with. It feels like a really accurate and human bit of cognitive dissonance in there. And I also just love the manufactured nature of Jemisin's personality, that she directly chose who she had to be and forces herself to fit in that mold. And I love seeing the moments that she spills over that mold and, like, becomes more than this identity she's built for herself. And it's all just a really cool look at the flexibility and inflexibility of identity. So yeah. This is a book that, if someone had described it to me before I bought it, I probably never would have picked it up. I would have thought, oh, that's going to be way too grim and dark for me. And that would have been a tragedy, because this is a damn good book. And also, an enjoyable book. This is a book saying some serious, important things about how society treats those who are seen as different, and about the horrors that humanity can enact on each other when under pressure. But it's also just a fun, enjoyable read. Like, I enjoyed following the characters and watching them grow. One more spoiler here. There's a false happy ending in this book, which is pretty common. They happen in, I would say, at least 3/4 of books. And you know good and well it's not a real happy ending, because there are still like over 100 pages left in the book. And also, by that point, you've probably figured out that Jemisin and Senite are the same person, and where Jemisin starts is not where we are with Senite in that point, so you know there's more stuff coming. But also there's just that lingering sense of dread that you know disaster is coming. And when I reach that point in the book, I set it down for like 2 days. Not because I didn't want to know what happened next, but because I just wanted the characters to have their happy ending for a little while longer. And to me, that's a sign of a really good book. I wanted these characters to have happiness the way that I want other people to have happiness. It's really effective. I love these characters. I love the world. I love the magic system. I love the society that has been set up here. I love this book. I will be ordering the next one pretty damn soon. So yeah, my opinion is the 5th season is a damn good book. And I know everyone thinks that. It's not a new take.